Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football for the Auburn fans that have been rocking with the boys the last couple of months. Many of y'all know this. We've talked a lot about Auburn leading into 2025. And the general consensus many of us had was, hey, if this team comes together, I don't think there's a lot of people that realize how dangerous this Auburn football team can be. Now, look, is it a little bit early to be starting to make these claims? You could make that argument. But with the 2 game sample set that we have, I think a lot of Auburn fans have a lot to be excited about in terms of what this team can do in 2025. My general take before we get nitty gritty with it is this football team feels a little bit more like a program than just a collection of talent. And it's funny when you return a lot of players and you return the bulk of your coaching staff, it's funny how things seem to come together because you go back to Auburn specifically in 2024 and say, hey, we always felt like they had a little bit more talent than what they were playing like Saturdays in the fall. I think a big storyline there was a lot of new players, a lot of young players specifically on defense, but also brand new coaching staff. I mean, you look at this team in 2025 and say, hey, you return a lot of those young players. You also return the bulk of your coaching staff. It's funny how this team feels like they're a little bit more gelled, like they're a little bit more of a togetherness program. Not sure that's the best way to word it. Feels like it's a little bit more of a program than just collection of good football players. That's probably where I would start this conversation. Now, when you start getting nitty gritty, you start to realize that there are elements of this Auburn football team that are going to present some monster problems for a lot of teams in the SEC. That's the storyline I want to get into today. Before we do, and as always, to the Auburn fans, appreciate you guys. It's been really fun talking this football team for the last 24 months. And there's been a lot of frustrating conversations that we've had over the last couple of years. It feels good to talk about this Auburn team playing the way they're supposed to play on Saturdays. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And hey, how about this? A little vibe check from the Auburn fans in the comment section, meaning, hey, with 2 games under the belt, 2 wins under the belt, do we have changed expectations in terms of what we expect from this team in 2025? Would love to hear from you guys. Appreciate y'all. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start with this. And excuse me, I think a lot of Auburn fans that not only follow this program, but follow this sport, but follow this conference closely understand this. When you want to be a team that can compete at the highest level of this conference, it's one thing to have good football players. What normally separates the good and great teams is the depth that they have. And when you get into late October and you get into the month of November, hey, what are the teams that have the adequate depth to continue to win games in this conference? That's what separates the teams like Georgia and separates the teams like Alabama historically in this conference. I feel like Auburn this year has a lot of depth, especially where it matters. You look at the lines of scrimmage and say, hey, we got 7, 8 guys that we start that we like, that we trust on the offensive line. Then you look at the defensive line. That's been, to me, the biggest storyline is how many bodies they're able to rotate and not really have a massive drop off in level of play. I look at this team and say, specifically along the lines of scrimmage, that they're built to win games in November. But then you take just a general look at this team and say, hey, what are the position groups where, if a guy or two goes down, what are the position groups that become an immediate problem? I'm not sure if there's a position group that you highlight and say, yeah, that could be a massive problem. You look across the country, and there are a lot of really good teams that are an injury or two away from having some serious problems. I don't think Auburn is in that boat. Excuse me, a little bit of a cold, the kids fighting. That to me, I think separates this team in 2025. That to me is what makes this team a little bit different in 2025. Let's evaluate what we've seen from Jackson Arnold. Has it been perfect? No. Has it been what we need? Yeah. Like that's probably my evaluation of Jackson Arnold so far in 2025 is he is doing exactly what he needs to do to run this Auburn offense. And that was really the storyline when we talked about Jackson Arnold all off season long. We don't need a guy to put this offense on his back. He's got plenty of weapons around him just to be a solid player that's doing his job. This Auburn team going to score a lot of points. Like you go back to that week 1 game against Baylor. Hey, if Baylor's going to leave their 2 safeties high and try to take away some of that deeper third stuff that Auburn likes to run, let's just go run the football. That's exactly what Auburn did. Then you go to that game against Ball State and say, hey, Ball State did a very good job, keeping Auburn out of that deeper third. But there was a lot of short stuff in the intermediate portions of the field that Auburn could attack. It's exactly what Jackson Arnold did. What was he, 24, 28 with 2 throwaways? I mean, he's a guy that, is he playing like a Heisman Trophy winner? No. Is he doing exactly what he needs to do to move the football and score points? Yes. That's all we were looking for from Jackson Arnold. Now, there are still things, and at least in my opinion, that need to be cleaned up. Most notably, taking the sacks and holding on to the football. When Ball State rushed 3 and dropped 8, you saw him. I don't necessarily think it's fair to say he was slow to pull the trigger, but you just didn't see him find answers fast enough. I believe he's sitting around a 2.9-second average time to throw. That's a little bit high. Especially as you get into SEC play, if he can continue to get a little bit more comfortable, finding his answers quickly, not taking as many sacks, that's the next step. Like you get what you've seen from Jackson on the first 2 weeks, and then you see him avoid holding on to the football, and you see him avoid taking those sacks. This Auburn offense is going to score a lot of points because I look at it and say, hey, this team can run the football. This is an offensive line that, although I think can be better in pass protection, and I think there's a good chance this can be a just fine pass protection unit, they're running the piss out of the football. And there's not a lot of front sevens in the SEC that I think will be able to comfortably stop this Auburn rushing attack with light boxes. So if you want to try to stop what Auburn's doing running the football, you probably have to walk into safety into the box. And then you got guys like Cam Coleman, and then you got guys like Eric Singleton on the outside that can make teams pay. If Jackson Arnold continues to play the way he's playing, this becomes an Auburn offense that's really, really hard to deal with. Now, flipping sides to the defensive side of the football, I don't think people are talking enough about how good this defense can be. And look, I get, was it perfect against Baylor? No, probably not. I think there's a fair amount to say, like, hey, number one, week 1 opener on the road, some sloppy zone drops, some sloppy tackling in space. You can recognize Auburn probably didn't play the way we expected them to play on defense. But what you also can recognize is that Baylor offense might end up being a top 10 offense in the country. Like Sawyer Robertson was extremely sharp. They got legitimate NFL dudes on the outside with a veteran offensive line. My biggest takeaway, though, is that this front seven, it can really get after the passer. And the reason I choose to say front seven is we know DJ Durkin likes to blitz them linebackers. And golly, do we have some linebackers that can trigger downhill and get after the passer? That linebacker position was, at least to me, a really big question for Auburn going into the 2025 year. What we've seen from Robert Woodyard, what we've seen from Xavier Atkins, I probably got to move Xavier Atkins into that starting role because that he has cemented himself as the best linebacker on this football team. DeMarcus Riddick, you got linebackers that fit what DJ Durkin wants to do in ways that you probably didn't have in the 2024 year. Then you look at the front four. It is, let's start with this. Keldrick Falk, Amaris Williams, Kieron Crawford. To me, that might be the best trio of pass rushers that you see in this conference. And again, I'll continue to say this. What should excite Auburn fans the most about that take right there is that not only is it really, really important to get after the quarterback, it might be the most important metric that I look for in defenses. Then I'm looking at the landscape of the SEC and say, hey, we got a lot of really good football teams in the SEC that have some question marks about pass protection on the offensive line. And we think Auburn has the unit, the defensive line, the dudes to capitalize on that. I'll say this, Malik Blockton, he's taken a step. You look at a guy like Darian Smith as a true freshman, he can get after the passer. And then the other conversation is, all right, how about the big bodies? Not just the pass rushers. How about the big bodies that we need to support the run? Jamison very, very good start to his senior season. I think Dallas Walker has looked apart everything we needed from him. You got a couple of freshmen that are able to contribute as well. There are a lot of bodies that are playing very, very stingy against the run. That's the recipe. Like if you're stingy against the run, you force these teams to be in the second, third, and long, obvious passing situations. Then you can get really creative with how you want to use Keldrick Falk and how you want to use Amaris Williams and how you want to use Kieran Crawford. Man, that's the recipe to having a dominant defense. And I think Auburn can be that in 2025. I truly believe this can be a top 20 defense in the country in 2025, maybe even a little bit higher. Nobody talking enough about Amaris Williams, man. I feel like I'm the only one. Maybe I'm just not seeing it right, but there's a lot of hype going to Keldrick Falk, as there should be. There's a lot of talk about Kieran Crawford. I think Amaris Williams has been awesome to start the 2025 season. Then you look at the back end and say, it's been maybe that Baylor game was a little bit sloppy, but I still know they can play in the back end. And they're still trying to figure out, hey, who are our best players in the secondary? As you iron that out, I am very confident that this secondary is going to be just fine in 2025. So I'm looking at it and kind of sum up our conversation on what makes Auburn feel different. The two biggest things are kind of the intangibles. Like number one, this program feels a little bit different. Feels a little bit more like a program than just a collection of talent, which is kind of how it felt in 2024. You got championship level depth, specifically along the lines of scrimmage. And Jackson Arnold is giving you exactly what you need from him. I still think there's steps for him to take. But in terms of how he's played the first 2 weeks, that's what we need. Moving the football, scoring points, and a defense that I think can get after the passer, can create a lot of turnovers, can create a lot of negative plays. That's the recipe being dangerous in this conference. And I think you look at the rest of the SEC and say it's not like the teams at the top have been all that impressive. And I think Auburn has been pretty damn impressive. We'll see how. And again, we need to see the consistency. We need to see this team go on the road and start beating some teams that they should be beating. It feels different to me early in 2025, and I think Auburn fans should be fired up about, hey, if it all comes together, watch out for this team being a dark horse college football playoff contender. That's the way I'd say it. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.